So, our next speaker is Rich Thompson. Rich Thompson comes from us as the Vice President of Marketing for ITW Welding North America. Rich Thompson currently serves as Vice President of Marketing for ITW, where he has strategic responsibility for key brands such as Miller and Hobart in the company's welding portfolio. Mr. Thompson has over 25 years of progressive strategic marketing, brand building, product commercialization, and general business management experience in both B2B and the B2C spaces. Before his current role at ITW, he led strategic brand marketing for Teflon, brand for DuPont, as well as several senior level marketing positions for Newell Rubbermaid. His work in marketing and branding has been recognized by Advertising Age magazine, being named to the prestigious Marketing 100 list, the American Marketing Association with their Gold Edison Award, and a recent 2014 American Advertising Association Award for Integrated Marketing for Miller's We Build campaign. A patent inventor, he has commercialized numerous successful new products in market and is known for bringing to his employers a fact-based approach to branding and overall business strategies. So we know about Rich, but one person remembered something you said last year. But today's talk is going to bring in integrated marketing, the drive for measurable results. Rich?
Okay, so today we've had the opportunity to listen to a number of different speakers about a number of different subjects. And again, I want to thank Jim and Steve for bringing me back here this year. It's been a real honor to speak here last year as it is this year. I've been really entertained by everybody here today, haven't we all? You know, they've had a lot of great stuff. Let's all give them a hand for this. So, everything that they've had to say, ironically, I have not looked at a single one of their presentations at all. And I was amazed. You know, Jim had asked me, because Rich, I need you to come in, and I need you to wrap this up in a bow and talk about integrated marketing. And I'm thinking, okay, this is great. I'm going to be able to do this, but I haven't seen any of these presentations yet. And of course, Jim in his great affable way, oh, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. You know, and I feel like a director, you know, you're hired for the film, and it's like, but we don't have a script yet. It's like, well, get started, you know. What's integrated marketing? Boy, that sounds like a real super slick marketing term that you're going to hear this guy talk about for the next 25 minutes. And you're going to say, wow, that's really cool. What is integrated marketing? Well, at ITW, we use 80-20 a lot, if you're familiar with the 80-20 rule. And this is kind of an 80-20 presentation of what integrated marketing is truly all about. So it's more than just a catchphrase. It's more than the cool thing to do. It is not cool. The fact is that integrated marketing makes money. Let me repeat that one more time. Integrated marketing makes money. It is not the black hole that your accountants worry about for money to dump into. It's the thing that actually generates sales. It generates interest. It generates loyalty to your brand. It's how people are connected to your brand, and most importantly, how you connect them to your brand. That's very important. That's the simple part about integrated marketing. It's how people are connected to your brand and how you, as responsible adults, are connecting people to your brand. Everybody, show of hands. Everybody hear the 5 Ps in marketing? Raise them up. Okay. I'm going to introduce you to the 3 Cs of integrated marketing. These are my own Cs. They're called congregation, connections, and consistency. A lot of people don't talk in those terms, but I certainly do. Anybody who works with me and worked with me for the last 20 years have heard those words come from me, and there is a simple reason for it. Because in an integrated marketing campaign, these 3 are absolutely paramount to take into consideration before you start anything. Before you start anything. So, before I go to the next slide, I'm going to ask everybody in this room to stand up. Especially we're talking about a congregation. Everybody up. Stand up. I almost feel like I should have a southern accent. Everybody stand up in this room. Praise God. That's the way it kind of feels, doesn't it? All right. Now, For each one of you who actually own a boat, fishing boat, run around, anything like that, please remain standing, and the rest of you can sit. Those of you who own a boat, okay, we got Jim. I knew you guys would stand. Okay, so we have about 10 people here who own a boat? Okay, Jim and Steve wanted me to let you know that you've all volunteered to be speakers for next year. No, I'm only kidding. I would like you to keep standing, okay? And when I want you to, now you guys are all on lakes or rivers, right? No? Oh, you're on oceans? Oh, even better. I grew up in Boston, so I grew up on the ocean, so I know what the deal is, but I live in Wisconsin, so I'm on a landlocked for the moment, except on fresh water. I see seagulls, but I can't smell salt air. Okay, when you're on the water and you're on a boat, tell me what the most important thing is to you while you're on that boat. Jim. And it's not drinking.
Other boats.
Other boats. Yourself, sir.
Where the rocks are.
Where the rocks are, okay.
A working boat.
A working boat would be important. Land. Steve.
Safety.
Bingo. And I have no Fitbit to give him. Okay, everybody can sit. Let me talk about the distress example, and I use this to illustrate this point. What Steve said is the most important thing about boating is safety. And you're thinking, what in the world does boating have to do with integrated marketing? Right? If you're on a boat and everything's going well and you think everything's going great, and you're out on the boat, let's say you're out on a lake you've never been on before, and you wanted to fish this lake forever, but you don't know any of the people, you don't know any of the formations out there, you don't know where the houses are, but you're having a great time. But by the time you get out to your spot, you just realize that you forgot to put the drain plug in. Anybody do that? I've seen somebody do that. Not very pleasant. Well, let's say you're on a lake. Let's go back to that story. Let's say you're on that lake. You've got out to your spot. You flew out there at 35 miles an hour. Now, typically, your boat's not filling up, but now you're filling up. You're noticing that you're starting to list. Well, according to the state that I live in, there are several things that you need to employ safety for yourselves. One is a whistle. Another one's an air horn. Another one is flares. Now think about that. All of those signals are either audible or they're visual. And maybe one of them or all of them in some combination may save your life. Because you may be in an area where you know no one. You can't yell over to your neighbor on the shore to say, hey, please, get me, I'm drowning. But when you think about it in those terms, just the DNR for our state gives you an opportunity to integrate the way you're going to probably be able to save your life and maybe the others on the boat. Because one of these messages may not work. Maybe your flares didn't work because you haven't upgraded them in the last 2 years. Maybe the air horn is not going to work because the kids that were on your boat before had emptied the damn thing while they're running around the house going, And what happens to the whistle? Maybe it's too cold. Maybe you can't even generate enough of a blow for let that whistle to go out as a signal to anybody else. Then you're in real trouble. That's the critical thing about integrated marketing. How do you think about all these different parts and pieces that come together that can even save your brand? Especially save your brand from drowning. So, integrated marketing, when you think about that, when you think about the safety example I gave you, it does not mean that, well, out of the three, I guess I'll bring a whistle. I got a whistle, so I'm in compliance. You're not in compliance because the rules state on certain size boats that you have to have a number of different things on the boat to save your butt from drowning. Jim and I have talked about this many a time. A lot of people think, oh, well, hey, we're just going to go online and we're going to put some stuff online, and I hear it's cheap to do. Forget print. Forget print. That's almost good enough to give Jim and Steve a heart attack. Think about that. But forget the heart attack, but think about the fact that not all of the people that you have in your marketplace digest information from that one single place that you would like to go. It's where they want to go, not where you think it's going to be. So most importantly, marketing in this type, especially when you integrate your message, it maximizes the volume of your message and the effectiveness of your results. Let's go back to the drowning situation of the boat. How'd you like to be stuck in a lake where you only have one method of signaling to somebody that you're in trouble? What happens if you just went on a lake where there's no homes around it? But maybe there is one a mile away. If you only have a whistle, who's going to hear it? But if you have a flare, maybe you've got a chance. Everybody understand that? It puts you in a position of having the best chance to succeed. So congregations, if I use my Southern Baptist minister voice, it's not about congregations as we think of in terms of a church or a synagogue or a mosque. Our congregations that we talk about in marketing are really your customers. They're your audience. They're your targets. They're your targets. And you have to understand this congregation. I might have made fun of, like, let's say, a Southern Baptist minister, for an example, by the imitation I did. But when you think about that for a second, ministers, priests, rabbis, they all have to understand what their congregation is and how they're thinking. Because every single one's a little different. You think of most churches, let's say in the late 1800s in America, what do they preach the most? They preach something to their congregation that meant a lot to them that they could relate to. Those were the hellfire sermons we all remember. Hopefully we're not that old. But those are the hellfire sermons that made people think about not so much the good thing, but something that they feared. And there was a lot of fear at that time, and it was fear of hell. But they were very effective with their congregation. How do you know your congregation? Ask yourself that question today. How do you know them? Do you know them? Have you even bothered to figure out who they are? Are they small? Are they large? Are they happy? Are they upset? Are they growing? Are they shrinking? Most of all, are they loyal? Are they loyal to you? Are they maybe, God forbid, looking for better options? Putting themselves into the consideration set is so important these days. A lot of people, we divide this up in marketing and ITW in two sets. When we think about loyalty, we think about putting the people, when they look at our brand, as the one I prefer or one of several I consider. We always aim for the one I prefer. And we notice when brands may be challenged in some way, we have to start them into the consideration set then rather than try to drive them into the one they prefer. Because that's arrogant. We don't need to do that. We have to get them into the set to have them move along, into the experience to develop that person into saying, that's the brand I prefer. You have to get them into that. Integrated marketing can help you with doing this. These congregations are only on the grow when you find the ways to make the connections. They are only on the grow when you find the way to make the connections. If you do not allow for all the things and all the pieces of information, the data, and most especially the insights, I can guarantee you your congregation will never, ever be on the grow. Connections. Let's talk about this part, the second C. Connections are made through multiple channels to your congregations to communicate your message to those congregations. That's incredibly critical. Now take a look at this list here. Do you notice that I just didn't say social media? Did you notice I just didn't say print? Or just one or two things that were probably cool for right now? That maybe you think is cool? It's a combination of all of these in understanding where your audiences are going. It's print, it's online, it's social, it's direct mail, it's trade shows, especially very important in the welding business in which we're in. Traditional and non-traditional, could even be television. And more. All of these things go into the integrated marketing program, and making the decisions about which ones you pick are incredibly important to how you connect to your congregation. Why in the world is this important? Your congregation may be present in any one of those places, or most importantly, all. And a lot of people kind of forget that because in the digital age, a lot of folks say, hey, an agency just came in and pitched me the fact that all of these people might be on this social media site, and they get all their information from Facebook. So you know what? We got to stop thinking about print. We got to stop thinking about this. We got to stop and just go right to Facebook. Well, how do they know that? Are you sure about that? Boy, that's a big, big bet. Get the information, find out where they're at. You got to know these things. Find out first. Invest. I can't overemphasize the fact of investment on research. Research is absolutely key to making an integrated marketing program work. Trends, understanding demographics, understanding behavior. Permitted even talked about information consumption today. How do they consume information? Where do they look for it? What kind do they look for? Even when Steve was talking about relative to content marketing, absolutely important to understand where they get this. Without this, you're dead. You know, before I came into different organizations, DuPont for one, or ITW for another, great, super well-oiled organizations that understand their meanings of their brands and what have you, and have great relationships with their customers, their distributors, their end users. The fact is that a lot of this stuff was just data. Good marketers, and I'll repeat this, good marketers know how to use data. Great marketers figure out the insight to create strategy to win. Great marketers figure out the insight to create strategy to win. That's the difference between a good marketer and a great marketer. I think Deming had said one time, it's like, you know, without data, you're just another person with an opinion. In marketing world, without insight, there's no way that you can do any of this. You have to have the insight to figure out what these people are, who these people are, what they're doing, why they do it, understanding what those trends are, how they consume this information, and give them what they want. Don't give them what you think they want. I've run into a number of people who are marketers, per se, that go do that all the time. And they keep wondering why they only grow like 1% to 2% a year. And then they look at the other people who are great marketers who use insights to create strategy, and then they can't understand why they're doing 5 to 10% a year. The return on investment of this kind of action is incredibly important. Can I show of hands here? How many people have the title of either marketing manager, marketing director, or vice president of marketing? Show of hands. Wow, there's a lot. There's quite a few. I want you to think about your role just a little differently for about 15 seconds. You as a marketing manager, director, or vice president of marketing are all about focus. It's developing focus with these kinds of pieces of information to create data and insight. I always look back to, you know, this is, Jim, I had to have a tie back to Jaws. This is my favorite quote. Directing is knowing where to place your focus. And that was said by Steven Spielberg. He was asked in an interview to say, Steven, you know, what is directing to you? And he very simply put it, directing is knowing where to place your focus. Every marketing manager, every director, every VP of marketing in this room are responsible for directing this great film that is telling your brand story. You're all responsible for telling your brand story. And if you're not focused, you're not a good director. But if you are, you understand what Spielberg is saying here. That's why he's so successful in telling any kind of story he wants to, in any which way he wants to, because he knows where to place his focus. So let's talk about connections. Go where they really are and want to be. Don't, please, don't go where you think or you feel or where you believe they are. That's the quickest way to get yourself in trouble. And that's the easiest way that I've said this, and Jim and I have talked about this before. People will say, screw research, I've got experienced people, people know exactly what's going on, I'll just ask the sales guys. They'll explain all of this to me, and I'll be able to figure this out, and we'll have a program. There are probably bits and pieces and kernels of truth that you're going to get from that. But I can guarantee you, if it's based on opinion or what the anecdotal stuff is or the mother-in-law research you're going to do, you're probably not going to be as successful. Go out, invest the money, get the research done, and understand what these people want. You go do this like I was suggesting, and I tell this to my audiences a lot. If you do this, I think, I feel, I believe stuff, it's like making an urgent phone call to a disconnected number. Everybody wants to run out and get this as fast as they can, as fast as they want, but the fact of the matter is, that's number, they're probably not going to be there. Invest. Take the time to understand it. Get the data. Create insights that build your strategy. The third C is consistency. No long-term connection works without consistency. None. I could say that with a lot of chutzpah. It is true. Think of your last cell phone call in a rural wooded area. Think about this. You think of the breaks you had on that phone call, static, lost words, misunderstanding of words. It's the same thing. It's the same thing of, like, let's say, especially if somebody calls me that I really don't want to talk to. You know, and let's say I'm on a lake on a boat, and it's like, Rich, it sounds like a Japanese horror movie, doesn't it? What? And you know what I've done before? Because it breaks up and I know it's not their fault. I hang up. Because I don't want to hear this crap anymore. Because the connection is wrong. Now, it might be the carrier, it might be something else, but I don't want to hear this noise. I'd rather listen to the placid sounds of the lake. Forget it. I don't want to listen. That's the same kind of reaction your audience will have if you are not consistent. Consistency is when congregations can be fully engaged when all your connections are completely consistent. Completely consistent. Now, as I talked last year, for those of you who were here, especially you, Kelly, so these are 5 things that I want you to remind yourself of. You have to be on brand. You have to be on message. You have to be on target. You have to be on your channel. And most especially on truth. Let me go back on this. We'll talk a little bit about brand after this slide. But I cannot emphasize any more on these 5 points. If you're not on this and you're all having people in your organization consistently doing this, there are little fractures that build up in your brand and your experience. And these little fractures just create these small cracks. And you may not see them right away, but they start to play out a little bit more and more as you go along. And it becomes more dangerous for your brand to survive in a consistent manner. And if it's not consistent, people start to walk away, just like the phone call I talked about. Let's start with the definition of brand. I used this last year, but there are many people who would actually email me and say, hey, Rich, can you kind of go over this again? I don't know why that did not do that in full, but for some strange reason, I'll just recite it.
All your words are in the upper left.
That's odd, huh? Now talk about problems with consistency. Let me tell you what this slide was supposed to say. For some reason, it didn't translate. A brand is a set of differentiating promises that create a connection between your customer and a product. The customer is assured of consistent quality and a superior value. Those are both functional and emotional. Remember what Dane said about emotional? Consistent quality and superior value. Those are the functional and emotional characteristics of a brand that your customer will pay a price for and give their loyalty to, that creates a reasonable return for the brand, the business, and the shareholder. Remember what I said, it's about money? It truly is. It's not this artsy-fartsy stuff in marketing. It's not ads. It's not what you did cool on a banner or something like that. That's not marketing at all. That's not brand at all. The fact is, brand is the total experience that people have with you, the company. With engineering, customer service, with sales, with marketing, everything relates to those promises. Let's talk about positioning here a little bit. If you look at those 5 areas, in the center of this is fit. You have to leverage your strengths of your current offerings and desires of what you want to do in the marketplace. Value, that's the perceived benefits that the customers value for what they see in you and your product and your company. Credibility. Credibility goes back to consistency. Who are you and is it credible? Can you maintain that level of credibility for a long period of time? Sustainability. That's why it's so important when you do ad campaigns and what have you, and that message is there. Don't try to reinvent the wheel every year. Try to come up with something that is meaningful, that you can sustain for 3 to 5 years at least. Okay, what is the tagline for Visa? Anybody? Anyone? No, that's MasterCard. It's everywhere you want to be. How long have they had that campaign out? Almost 2 decades. Because they've created something that has legs. This moves. It's almost like a centipede. The center always stays the same, but the campaign actually moves along. That goes back to sustainability, and most importantly, uniqueness. Go where competitors are not. It doesn't mean, hey, just throw something in there. My competitor's not there, I should go there. I'll give you a great example of this. I can't divulge any names. There's a wonderful fast food chain that's been in business a long time. And they went after a competitor called Subway. Everybody eaten a Subway before? Okay. For the last couple of years, we've seen different ad campaigns from this competitor. When I start mentioning these ad campaigns, you'll go, oh, I know what this is. Good mood food. Slicing up freshness. Sound familiar? Well, you got it. And what's interesting is I've got a good friend in the strategy business in New York City. He went to them and started talking to their CMO about what they should do, and they wanted to go after Arby's because they wanted to own healthy moms. And the strategist looked at him and said, well, wait a minute, you want to own healthy moms? Let me ask you a question. Give me your 3 best sellers for Arby's. He goes, oh, well, that's beef and cheddar, Jamocha shakes, and curly fries. So he looks back at the chart, he looks at the brand position, he goes, where did healthy moms come in? So when he asked that question, what was interesting about this is that I don't see how I can position you, help you position this healthy moms thing when that's who you are. Why don't you own who you are? And when he turns around, he says, this is classic. This is the classic marketing mistake. He goes, well, we kind of figured that it would be interesting if we went after Subway. And then he goes, I've been selling this to our CEO for the last year, so I can't change that. Could you imagine? So when the Slicing of Freshness campaign came out, that came out at a time where he was softening his position. So the problem was that campaign never took off. Now it's the new one, we got the meats. More about who they are. It's being about credible and also being unique. They don't have to go and attack Subway to make it being successful. Here's another example of how not to be on. I always call this the big heart bad delivery. Let me tell you a story. I was in a restaurant with my son about a month and a half ago. And we're at the checkout counter, and there's a young boy and a father standing in front of me, and they're blocking the view to the cashier. The manager of the restaurant is up in front, telling them how much it will be. And I'm sitting there waiting, and I hear the little boy in front of me say something that went a lot like this. I see him look down, and he goes, Daddy, what's that? And then his son looked down and went, I don't know. He said, why would I want a disease for $1? And my son and I looked at each other. Disease for $1? He's thinking, my son goes, it's got to be Ebola, we got to go. You know, I'm like, I got to get out, you know. So I'm thinking, what in the world are they talking about? So, as it turns out, the boy and the father go away, and lo and behold, sitting in front of me is this. I don't know if you can kind of see that. Now, this was interesting. This was really interesting because when I saw this, I said to myself, here's a box, and it had a bunch of candy bars in it. And it looked like there was one missing. And there was a piece of cardboard scribbled on there with black pen, and it said, cystic fibrosis, $1. Now, CF is obviously a serious situation, so I'm not making fun of that. But what I am saying is that somebody who went into that restaurant there asked this manager to set up these candy bars that you can buy for $1. This is what I'm figuring. And it's to support cystic fibrosis, right? The cause is right, the thought is right, the heart is right, but the message is wrong. The delivery is wrong, and the results are disastrous. Here's why the results are disastrous. I ended up asking the manager, I said, by the way, I said, can I ask you a question about this? What this is about? He goes, those are some charity candy bars for a CF thing that they're doing in town. And I'm looking at this thing, I'm like, wow, who set this up? He goes, oh, some lady came in. I go, can I ask you how long this has been here? And this is what he said, 2 months. 2 months. And I said, do you know how many you've sold? He goes, looking at the chart, we sold one candy bar. We sold one. Remember the example that Dane gave you earlier today about the gentleman who was blind? And she rewrote the message for the people, and all the money started coming in because they understood it on an emotional level. Could you imagine the success you would have had if the message was delivered better? Imagine that. So let's recap this. Know your congregation. Know your congregation. The best ministers, the best priests, the best rabbis, the best directors know their congregation. They know their audience, and now we're getting another thing screwed up here. For some strange reason, it doesn't want to agree with me. So understand the level of research that you have to do to know your congregation. Let's see if it ends up in the top again. Nope, it won't this time. How do you leverage those messages across connections? Understand all the places where they typically will go. It doesn't mean that the full list I gave you is the full list you should run out and go to tomorrow. Get the information about where these people are to get to them with the most consistent message possible. So drive consistency in your message. If you don't do this, I can guarantee you that all the efforts you made on the first 2 C's will be for naught. You will have an extremely tough time making a real big go of it. And you'll have a very tough time convincing somebody in finance to fund your program again. Product bottle will go to the top again for some strange reason. Let me finish up with something here. The same son who we were talking about the CF piece in the restaurant. As I was writing this about 2 months ago, he sat down and he said, Dad, who are you writing this for? I said, actually, I'm writing it for a group of engineers who actually do marketing. And he said, can I ask you something? Sure. He goes, who's your hero? I said, I know what he's doing. And he's, no, I just want to kind of know who your professional hero might be. You know, and for you guys, you'd probably think I'm going to say somebody like Donnie Deutsch from Deutsch Agency, or David Ogilvy from Ogilvy and Mather and all that kind of stuff. Or maybe it's Don Draper on Mad Men or something, okay? But I can guarantee you it's not one of those. On the very back and behind my desk is a picture of my hero, which oddly enough connects back to Dane's presentation from this morning. My hero, ever since I was a kid, was Gene Kranz. Anybody know who Gene Kranz is? Flight director for all the Apollo flights in Gemini. Major flight director that saved Apollo 13, which we're going to be celebrating 45 years of that in just a few weeks. Gene Kranz is a wonderful man. And Gene Kranz, I think probably as much of an engineer as he is, I can remember one of the things that I overheard Gene say. He said, out of all the flight directors in NASA, I'm probably the most emotional, which is true. As a matter of fact, when the capsule actually splashed down for Apollo 13, the one thing that he said, he goes, I sat down behind my screen to hide my tears because I didn't want my team to see that I'd lost it. Marketing is an emotional business, and there's nothing wrong with being emotional, especially for an engineer who has saved so many lives and done so many great things for this great country of ours. So when I was going through that with Mitchell, he knew that I'd probably say that. And I looked at him and I said, well, you know what I'd say. And he goes, yeah, I think I know what I'd say. I looked at him and went, yeah, I still love Gene Kranz, but when I grow up, I still want to be a marketer. There has to be some enthusiasm to your job. I've never lost my childlike enthusiasm for this job ever since I started. So in your positions, as much as you're going to be data-driven and insight-driven, never lose your enthusiasm. You lose your enthusiasm, your brand loses it too. Any questions? Yes?
I know how important. I know how important.
I don't think so.
I know how important that research is.
The salespeople do not necessarily want us talking to their customers or to
Oh,
our
yeah,
customers. I don't know if anybody else has that problem. We're trying to put together some surveys that would be easily sent to a customer or even guide a conversation or an interview with a salesperson, because there's certain pieces of information we need that we're not getting. Especially with the engineering audience, it's really, it's hard, it's challenging. And so do you recommend any particular ways to get the information? Knowing that how important it is to get it, how do we get it?
Well, we've done a number of different things. We've actually put together some, online groups, especially in welding, because we talk to weld engineers and just welders and also buyers of welding equipment, because a lot of this is large capital equipment expenditures. So the buying process and the using process are somewhat different, because the buying process is, like one of our earlier speakers had talked about today, are done by committee, and it takes a long time for a lot of that to happen. But the end users are so critical, because they do have an influence on the buyers. So we actually have groups that we've actually assembled that we go out to, and we keep them captive. So, rather than the focus groups and that kind of thing, we typically don't do that. Now, where we have a lot of equipment, we also go through another way, is through product registration. We have a number of different things that are set up through registration with products that we actually go back to from an outbound perspective about getting information from them online. And welders love to talk. They do. Yeah, you wouldn't think so. They're all day with a mask over their head. But believe me, when the mask comes up, gosh, they talk all the time. They love to talk about the passion in their job. So I would say, if you have a way to have product reg become part of your piece of where you can do your outbound marketing to them, especially when asking questions and research, it works wonderful. Yes?
Last question.
Yeah. When I look at the concept of integrated marketing, I really appreciate the picture that you painted, and it really rings true for our experience. But I wonder if you could help paint a broad picture of what life looks like for a marketing department before integrated marketing and after integrated marketing. Because I assume that the pieces are the same: ads, shows, digital marketing, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, great question. Actually, I could use my own experience when I first came to ITW. When I came there, we had one ad campaign off here, working in print, and then we had a number of different things that would happen relative to trade shows and road shows, and then we had another thing over here that we did online, and each message was different. All interesting and all successful, that we had successful measures on, but it wasn't anything consistent. And I kept going back and back and back and looking at this, guys, why aren't we just picking one thing to say about us that speaks to our DNA? It has to be about your DNA, whatever your DNA might be for your organization. But you're going to have to figure out what that DNA is based upon what that research will tell you in order to say, in our case it was We Build. We Build had a way of going across, let's say, different segments that we play in, whether it would be energy, oil and gas, it could be something in construction, commercial business, restoration of cars, art, all those kinds of things. But we were able to get one message around there that it's consistent all the way around, so that when you see it online, when you see it on the shows, when you see it on the trade, any of the trucks, it was all about that. But again, it was kind of like the way I described Visa. The center was designed like a centipede. It could move, but the center of the story always remains the same. So that it was very hard to transfer our group to go do that, and it was very painful at times, kind of like that. That was the same face that I would get. It's like, we're gonna do what? That was the same face that I would get. It's a journey. It truly is a journey. Sometimes it's a difficult one, but once you start making it, and then all of a sudden you start to see the results come in, people go, oh yeah, now I get it. So, okay, well everybody, thank you very much. We appreciate the time and interest.